Hi, my name is Holly Amato, and I have Manny Nino, a mortgage loan consultant and first vice president at First State Bank in Clinton Township, Michigan, with me today on the Onward and Upward show. Manny's in the top 50 loan officers in Michigan, and he's also licensed in 48 states. Today, our focus is really going to be on people who've been going through some tough life circumstances and how they can get approved to buy a home and no longer have to be locked out of becoming a homeowner. Thank you so much for joining me today, Manny.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I look
Absolutely.
forward to this. This is kind of a good topic, especially, with these times that we're in right now and how people can really overcome some challenges they've had in their life and kind of getting it straightened out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we dive in, I have to make notice because your social media is just fantastic, totally on point. I think we're kind of kindred spirits because you seem
Yeah.
to love you seem to love making content as much as I do.
Well, yeah, I love it's kind of a fun outlet to do online because I'm probably a very boring person in real life. So it's
Well, our
fun to make
topic
the
is a little
videos.
dry. Our industry
Yeah.
topic, it's like a lot of numbers and what's going on in the market and financial stuff. So it's a way to make things lighter, make it more
Of
fun.
course. Instead of just putting a picture of a house out there somewhere and hoping people click on it. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It makes that we enjoy it anyways. So we have a good time. I think everybody else does too. It makes you smile. So we got a lot to unpack today. In our industry, we're consistently coming into contact with people who have extenuating circumstances, yet they still need a home just like everybody else.
Of
And
course.
up until recently, the guidelines just haven't really been on their side. But you posted something that caught my attention about some major changes. And I think it's maybe just First State Bank.
Yeah, we do them. They're called portfolio loans. So essentially a portfolio loan is any loan that doesn't fit inside of the little box of Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or FHA or VA, whichever it may be. If the people don't fit in this box that's set up, then essentially you'd have to get a portfolio loan.
Right.
Now, any lender that uses their own money to fund can set up their own type of portfolio loans. So we have some that, if somebody had a foreclosure recently or bankruptcy, short sale, whatever it may be, that may not stop them from getting into a home.
Right. So why don't you kind of deconstruct that a little bit and talk about what the old standards were, like if you got a foreclosure or a bankruptcy or a short sale, how long you used to have to wait, and then what you guys are able to do currently.
Okay. So let's first start with foreclosure, which I think is, the biggest derogatory event when it comes to buying a new home. If you were to get a conventional mortgage, generally you have to wait 7 years after that foreclosure to get into a home.
Long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the government programs, FHA and rural development, there's a 3-year wait. And the shortest time period is if you can do a VA loan. If you're a veteran, active military, or surviving spouse, there's a 2-year wait after that. Right. So we know that foreclosures can happen for any reason. And it may be outside of your control, whatever it may be.
Right.
So we want to try to help people get back on track as soon as possible. So instead of the 7-year wait, we only have a 1-year wait after.
That's fantastic. Because these people typically have to rent. And we already know that, once you have that, it's tougher. And rent is typically, you're paying more to rent than to be a homeowner. So it's almost like you went through a hard time and now it's going to be even harder for you to get a home. So that's going to change things drastically. Do you think this program is going to be around for a period of time, or can we expect it
I've been at the bank, this particular bank here for 7 years, and it's been here the entire time I've been here.
I don't even know how I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we try to get it out there, but, obviously the market's been good. So we haven't seen a ton of foreclosures, that we saw in the, let's say 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
But they are starting to come back a little bit, with some people losing jobs, things like that. The kind of saving factor was, before foreclosure, a lot of people were able to sell and they still had equity in the home.
And that's why people didn't let it go. Yeah. We're like, why would you lose this?
Yeah. Why would you lose it? You have the equity. Let's just sell it.
Yeah. So it made more sense.
So, yeah. And then short sales, same thing. A lot of people still have the equity. So we're not seeing a ton of short sales right now.
Right.
But we are seeing a lot of bankruptcies.
That's the big one, I think.
the biggest one right now, Chapter 7, Chapter
Yep.
13 bankruptcies, where there's generally, a 2 to 4 year wait depending on which program you're getting into after a bankruptcy. We're able to do it 1 day after bankruptcy.
Okay, say that again for everybody. 1 day.
1 day.
That's wild because, some of the stats that we know, I think, we had like the low rates, 2021, the economy was going in a different direction for a little while and people had extra money. They were giving those incentives after COVID. And then we see now what's crazy is even though things were good, that we're the most in debt as a country we've ever been. I don't remember how many trillions of dollars we are in debt as a country.
It's insane.
Each person who has debt is about $17 to $18 in debt, they say. I think there's like only 20% of people who aren't. These are rough statistics, like 80% are. And if they are, they're carrying 17 to 18,000. That's just an average in debt. So, clearly we need some help managing her money. We need to come alongside with some financial advisors and some great loan like yourself who can sit down. Because I know, you do a lot of counseling with people. I'm assuming like you sit down, you look at their credit report, and sometimes you can help them. Hey, we can clean this up. So if you can give me 3 months or 6 months or whatever you need, we could essentially get your rate, better for you if we could get you cleaned up. So
yeah, I look at a lot of people's credit reports, and we do have access to run credit simulators through the bureaus as well, saying, hey, if you pay this off or you pay this off, this is essentially what your score is going to go to.
Right.
Unfortunately, credit reporting and the scores don't make common sense, right? In my mind, if I'm going to pay off a collection or I'm going to pay off a charge off or whatever it is, my score should go up. That's not exactly how it happens, right? So we need to look at their credit report, run the simulator, see what's going to be most beneficial. And if there are people with some outstanding credit card debt, there are home equity loans that we could do to make their payments lower for interest rates or a cash out refinance, especially with people having the equity they have in their home right now.
Right. Yeah, I love the HELOC, that line of credit, because again, it fluctuates. I think it's like 7, 8, 9 right now. I have one. Last time I looked at it was
generally based
higher.
off of above
it was up higher, came down a little bit, but so much better than the 28 or 30% you're paying in a credit card. So
a lot of people don't see that. They're like, well, my minimum payment's only $30 on this credit card. I'm like, well, that's great, but you're not paying it down at all.
Right.
We need to get you in a better financial position doing something else. And the longer you wait to do something, the worse it's going to get.
Right. They need to look at the amount of interest they're paying each month. That's the number you need to be looking at, because you're going to be, and how many years, it'll show you how many years you're going to be paying this if you only made that minimum. You're not going to get it paid off. So we want to help people do better. So when people come to you, would you say, are you getting people that are coming in like a 911, I got to get a house now? Are people right now a little bit more, giving some time? Are they more cautious? What are you seeing with buyer attitudes right now in this current market?
Right now, I would say half of my business right now are first-time home buyers.
Okay.
Because I think the market has opened up quite a bit for somebody that's a first-time home buyer. There's not as much competition with the homes they're looking at, and they're not as conscious of the rates where they were, a couple of years ago.
Right.
Especially somebody that's been in their house for quite some time and refinanced when the rates were, 2-3%. Those are the people that they really want to move. So like, I don't want to leave my, 3% to go to a 6 or 7%.
That's the struggle.
So, and then, they're like, well, I want to sell my house now, but I want to wait for the market to come down. If you're selling and buying at the same time, it truly doesn't matter when you're doing it. You're going to sell high and buy high, or sell low and buy low.
They want to sell high but buy low. And I'm like, everybody wants that.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. But that's just, the market is the market. And if it's buy high, it's going to be buy high. That means you're going to benefit. And then you're going to equal out, unless you're making that, downward move, like you're downsizing or going to a situation where it's going to benefit you that way. But yeah, if you're making a lateral move, it's going to be, or if you're, upsizing, it's going to be, what it's going to be. It's going to be more. It's just,
a lot of people, I'm sure you get the question all the time, what do you think the market's going to do? Or I get, what do you think the rates are going to do? I mean, if I knew that, I'd be rich, because I'd be hedging a lot on those things. I don't know. And if anybody says they do know, then
Right.
you're great.
Well, I like when all the economists will talk and they'll put their stats out. I like to watch what they have because it does give us something to go on. But we were supposed to have 6 rate decreases already or this year. And all we've seen is it go up, come down a little bit, go
the
back
opposite,
up like a yo-yo. I feel like we're just between 6.5% and 7%. We just keep just kind of up and down, and we're just kind of, they say it may come to 6% this year. Some people are saying high fives, but even so, it's not like you mentioned. People want to know, they want to wait for the market to come down. So if it comes down 1%, I love it. And I know you can do this, running those numbers and showing them what it looks like to just refinance now, buying now, instead of competing with all those people when you're going to have to go over, depending on which market it is, 10, 20, 30,000 over. It depends if that house is in high demand and when there's everybody doing the same thing that you are. Now we've got everybody.
I mean, if rates go down 2%, it's going to be a bloodbath.
For sure. It'll be 2021, which was very hard.
And we saw again with the, $50,000 over,
it was crazy. I had people losing at 50,000 over.
I actually just got a call a couple of weeks ago of somebody that bought one of those homes. They were, $30,000, $40,000 over. They didn't do an inspection, and now they're finding all these problems with the home because they just wanted it. They didn't do an inspection.
Yeah, not doing an inspection is something I've never encouraged anyone to do. I've never had a buyer not do an inspection. It's their choice, of course. But I've always said I would never buy a house without doing an inspection. You've got to know. You've got to count those costs. And that's just smart financial planning, especially like you said, they're going over. Well, where's your nest egg for? We all know they say to, at least save at least 1% of the price of the home per year for maintenance and for things that are going to go wrong. Those are things that just pop up, not things that you could have found out.
Prevented,
prevented or renegotiated on that. So yeah, I do think it's crazy. And then, I work with a lot of people getting divorced because I'm a certified divorce real estate specialist. And I know you do as well. I like a lot of what is happening for people going through divorce. Maybe we could talk about that for a moment. I believe that sometimes they're able to qualify as a first-time home buyer again. Am I correct on that?
Depending on the program, yes. Depending on how their current house was set up, how their divorce decree is written, there's a lot of variables when it comes to that. What I see, because I get a lot of leads from divorce attorneys of people looking to refinance after the divorce or get pre-approved to find something. Right. The issue that I have is it's kind of too late most of the time. The divorce decree has been done, everything's been finalized, and now we get to the point where somebody doesn't qualify or something like that. Obviously, as we're going through court proceedings, I think that would be the time to kind of reach out and say, where am I at financially?
Absolutely.
Because, the proceedings could take, months, 2 months, 6, whatever it is.
You might need to renegotiate because if you're sitting there thinking, yep, we can sell, I'm getting this much and I'm going to go buy a house. And then you find out you can't buy a house and you sold your house. That's you can't negotiate again, right? Like it's already stamped and sealed and delivered. So it's that catch-22 because while you're going through the divorce, you also have to make sure if you can buy that you have something in writing stating, yes, this property is not going to be considered marital property, right? Because I had people come to me and all of a sudden we're like, okay, we need this done. Well, they couldn't get it. And I've had people at the last minute have to switch it over, put different borrowers with them.
Co-signers or whatever it may be.
Yes, because they didn't want it to be considered marital property and have to cash half that out too. So many real estate agents don't tell people. People call me all the time and I'm like, well, can you even buy? They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, we have to go through these things because it's like, yeah, I can get you under contract and, and you can get a pre-approval. But if your divorce proceeding isn't far enough along and your soon to be ex-spouse, which is still married to you, can pull a claim to that, obviously you have to talk to your attorney, but there's a lot in that you have to know how to walk people through.
Yeah, especially when we're looking at financing. Obviously, if we're going to be giving somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars, we need to make sure they can pay us back. It's not just us thinking, there's government rules that say they have to be able to afford this payment so that we don't go back to those old foreclosures and things like that happened. And a lot of people, after they get divorced, they want to use either alimony or child support in order to qualify. Now, we can use that, but it has to meet certain criteria.
Right.
They want to use alimony or child support. they have to be receiving it for at least 6 months in a row, timely,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it has to continue for at least 3 years.
Right.
So, I'm not going to be able to pre-approve somebody that, the divorce decree says they're supposed to be getting child support, but it hasn't been paid.
Right.
Or, the child's 17 and they're only going to be getting it for a year.
Exactly.
I can't use that income, right?
And
So
use
we need
friend
to
of the
make
court.
sure.
People are like, oh, we're not even going to use friend of the court. It's going to be friendly. But then they miss a payment. And you can see that when you can see their financials. And it's like, you can't miss a payment because you've got it, like you said.
It has to be timely payment.
I don't know if was it 3 months for FHA and 6 months for conventional?
Correct.
Oh, so, and then again, talking the loan product, everyone wants the conventional, but with the FHA, yes, you're going to have the PMI, but you can get into a home sooner if you need that income. If you need to have that instead of waiting that full 6
Yeah. So not all people are the same. I get a lot of people, I'm sure you do, where it's like, well, my best friend, got a divorce and they were able to use this, this, and this. I'm like, well, your situation's not exactly the same.
Right.
And no situation's exactly the same. We go through a lot of, people that are going through a divorce. I mean, let's face it, 40% of marriages end in divorce. Pretty common. So a lot of people are.
It's a huge, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are worried that, they're not going to be able to find something to buy afterwards or whatever it may be. They can't afford it, or what do we do with the house? How do we sell it? That's where you really have to get going early on things.
Yes.
Talking to a lender or a realtor, whoever it may be, say, what are my options right now?
Right.
I don't want this divorce to basically ruin the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can help them kind of determine what's going to be best financial decision.
Right.
Especially during the tough time.
Yeah, it's such a difficult, when I went through mine, it just, your whole life is unraveling. And where you're going to live, that's like a basic need, especially if you have kids. So it's like so important. I always tell people you need to find your team, your team of people. You've got your attorney. Hopefully you've got a great attorney. When you're looking into the movie, you've got to have a great realtor that knows the process and knows the areas and knows what you're looking to do and everything that you need to do. Have to have a fantastic lender, because without the lender, we're not going anywhere. And of course we have our title company, but, yeah, they, a lot of the times their biggest concern is with kids is the school district. So that becomes our thing. A lot of the divorces will say, they have the 100-mile rule, some of them, or whatever they put in writing, that you've got to stay within a certain distance from the marital home. Both parents do. Or they might even say you have to be able to keep them in the same school district, which can be difficult depending on what school district.
Especially on a short time frame.
Exactly.
I see a lot of these divorce decrees where, especially with the home, if there's a marital home involved, where it says, one of the spouses has to either try to refinance the home within 6 months or a year, whatever time frame they put on it, or they have to sell it.
Right.
So, especially if it's both spouses on the mortgage, a lot of people think, well, the divorce decree says I'm not liable for that property anymore. Like, well, that's great, but you're still on the mortgage until they refinance.
Yes.
Now, if you're not on the mortgage and you're just on title, pretty easy. We'll do a quick claim deed, remove you from it, fine. But if you're on that mortgage, you're still liable for that debt. So if that other person's not making that payment, guess what it's going to do to your credit?
Right.
So we need to make sure in the beginning that we're looking at all of your options and what we need to do in that time frame set up by the decree.
Yes. And that's the biggest thing, is everyone's got to do what they've got to do to make it work. And I like, again, when they come and talk to me, getting them over to a lender and seeing what we're able to get done for them. And again, the school situation is tough a lot of the times, especially if it's one of the schools that, they don't do school of choice. So now we're in a time frame, again, why you want to come to us sooner than later, so that you can find out what are the prices, what are the taxes. Some spouses, believe it or not, I work with a lot of women and they don't know these things. They sometimes don't handle the finances, so they don't even know what the taxes are. They don't know what the payments are. So it's like trying to get educated really quickly, and it's heartbreaking sometimes, because you're like, wow, we needed more time for this.
and to be able to afford or be comfortable with the payment on one income.
Exactly.
Being able to qualify for something and being able to be comfortable with the payment are two different things.
Right.
So that's what I'm looking for, is saying, well, you qualify for this, but what are you comfortable paying each month? Because that's what we really want to put you into. It may be something, you're not in love with right now, but when I bought my first home, I don't think I was in love with it. And essentially you're kind of starting over, starting something new that could be a blessing, right?
Yes.
So that's what I want to make sure you're comfortable with what you're getting into.
Right. And it's good for rebuilding. And the other question I always ask is, how long are we going to be here? Because sometimes people coming out of a divorce, if they only have to be in that school district, let's use that example, for a couple of years, and they really don't want to stay in that area. Okay. So let's make sure, like, when we're making that purchase, you're getting set up with your finances properly, because if you're going to turn around and sell it within 2 years, and people always want to know, will I get my money out? Well, like you've already mentioned, if I had a crystal ball, I would be on a beach somewhere, just spitting facts to everybody, and I'd be drinking my little margarita. But we don't know these things, so we've got to really dig deep into what's going on in the market in that area and make sure that they're set up properly in the event that that's their actual goal, and set those expectations. If we break even and you sell in 2 years, that's not a bad thing, because now you're got the real estate costs on a different cost to close. 2 years is really not a big turn time, unless it was 2021 and we had like a 15% jump like we did, which was crazy.
And then we also do portfolio loans for someone that's coming out of a divorce, especially if, let's say, it's a wife that hadn't worked in 4, 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it may be, but they're getting a buyout from their current mortgage, where the ex-husband has given her portion of the equity, and she's like, well, I got this chunk of money, but I just started this new job last month. Now, generally, in the eyes of a lender, are like, well, you haven't worked in 10 years and now you have this new job. So, it doesn't look great on paper.
Right. That was me, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. I was the stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I was a teacher. I quit when I had my first daughter. So I was getting my life back together. That was me. 10 years, no job.
So there's special programs for that, back to work. There's an FHA program. But if you do have a good chunk of money to put down, let's say 20% or more, we can do portfolio loans for that, saying, hey, we understand we can use common sense. When it comes to our portfolio loans, it's common sense. Does it make financial sense for the bank, for the lender? But it doesn't quite fit in that box, right? But we're like, okay, well, she just went through this experience. Let's help her out. Right?
I love that, because you need all the help you can get, because it's a lot. It's a lot coming out. And, any circumstances, we're talking about divorce, but, people go through things, big medical debt, people that have medical debt. I know, maybe you can speak to, I know sometimes it's not held against them on their credit report. Sometimes it is. I'm not really clear on that, but
when it comes to qualifying somebody that has medical debt or medical collections, we totally ignore them.
I love that too, because that's not your fault.
It may affect their credit score. But as far as qualifying their debt to income ratio, we totally ignore it like it's not there.
And that's good for people to know. Not to say don't pay your bills, but because when...
That's just medical. Now, any other collections, we do.
Right. I mean, the Comcast, they'll come right after you. Comcast is one of the ones that are terrible. Like when you forget to return a box and they're blowing up your credit. Crazy stuff like that. But, people do get sick and things happen, and, life happens. So it's just, what I'm hearing from you today is that your whole entity, you guys are really focused on looking at the person holistically, and can we help? Instead of saying no, looking at it and go, well, can this be a yes? It looks like it might be a no, but can it be a yes? Which I really love that perspective.
Yeah. So we can do that to a point. As a lending institution, we still have to follow government rules when it comes to lending, which is ATR, ability to repay. Does this person have the ability to pay us each month, based on the income that they're bringing in? Now, but we can look at it and say, well, we can make a case for this. The income that they're bringing in doesn't really qualify on a normal Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or FHA guideline. we can look at our eyes saying, oh, and their bank statements are getting it every 2 weeks or every month, or that's pretty obvious. So we can kind of look at that, use a common sense approach and try to help out with that.
Sure.
Now, anytime we do a portfolio type loan, we do have to put at least 20% down.
Okay.
Right? Because without that, we're not going to be able to get mortgage insurance.
Sure, the risk.
Yeah, correct. So the mortgage insurance companies they follow the same rules as, Freddie and Fannie when it comes to underwriting.
I like to call them Fed Daddy.
Yeah, exactly.
The Fed Daddy rules.
They make all of our rules for us.
Right.
And we follow them blindly.
So another thing that I'm obviously paying attention to now, because I have 2 kids in college, is I don't think people, especially parents, don't realize it. Kids don't realize it as much. But when you've got those student loans and once you're graduated, I think you have 6 months and then the repayment starts. What are you seeing with these kids? This is my biggest concern. And you can speak to this better than I can. I'm concerned with the kids who are going to college, and I'm pro-college, but I look at it like they're going to spend, I don't know, these kids are coming out over $100,000 in debt, and they might not even be hitting 50 grand. Hopefully they're going to hit at least 50, but their first year, depending on what industry they're in, and obviously they're not doctors, because I know the doctors are a totally different scenario. But what are you finding with these kids that are coming out with this debt, and then they're looking to want to buy a home? Like, how does that? What should they?
So a lot of things have changed as far as calculating student loan debt.
Okay.
Over the past couple of years. Now, it used to be if the student loan debt was deferred, we didn't have to count it whatsoever. Now, that's still the case now, but it has to be deferred at least 12 months or more in order for us to not count it. If it's not, then there's several options. So Freddie Mac and FHA say, well, let's use that $100,000 balance. They say you have to use a half of 1% of the balance against them, right, towards their monthly debt. So $100,000 balance, we're counting $500 a month.
Okay.
Against that buyer.
Okay.
Right? Fannie Mae is a little higher, they're 1%. So I'd be counting $1,000 a month.
Okay.
Right. But there's also income-based repayment. Or income-driven. They're different depending on who the lender is for the student loan. Let's say somebody has $100,000 in student loan debt. They can request to go on an income-driven repayment plan, depending on how much they're making at their job. So I've seen people with $200,000 in student loan debt, and their monthly payment's like $40 a month.
Wow.
Now, are they ever gonna pay that student loan off? I'm sure at some point in their life.
They're all hoping it's going to get forgiven, right? That keeps it's like it's in, then it's out, then it's in, then it's out. They're hoping that'll get.
Yeah, so they can use income driven, and we help people set that up as well, saying, all right, your student loan's through Department of Ed or Nelnet or Sallie Mae, whoever it's through. You can go on there and request, for them to look at. You send them your pay stubs, W-2s, whatever they ask for, and they come up with an amount for you.
Right.
So instead of using the 0.5% or 1%, I can use the 30, 50, $60, whatever they come up with.
Right. And the Parent Plus
as long as it's more than zero.
Right. So I didn't have to do Parent Plus loans, thankfully, because we had a lot of Pell Grants and the kids had some scholarships. So it was great. My son is at Macomb. So it's, he has a Pell Grant, which covered, he's actually getting money back. My daughter's at Oakland and she has Pell Grants, a scholarship. And then she does have some unsubsidized and subsidized loans. But let's say that I had to be on as that Parent Plus loan. Obviously, she's on it with hers and I'm on it. It's obviously going to affect me as well. So those same guidelines you just mentioned.
If you essentially co-sign for, one of your kids, or I've seen people, they've co-signed for their grandchildren or nieces or nephews.
Yes.
If that's not currently being paid on, then we have to count it against you.
Okay. So we wouldn't have to count it now if they're still in school, if I had signed for that, correct?
We still have to count it.
We do have to count it, even though they're still in school and it hasn't started. Okay.
Well, yeah, if it's on your credit report.
Okay.
We only look at it if it's on your credit report.
So I won't even know because, I didn't have to do that. But I was interested in obviously finding out about that because there's just so many people dealing with that.
Yeah, anything anything on your credit report, we have to count against you to an extent. There are some things that we can remove as far as like I said, medical collections or any collections, less than a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
For conventional loans, any installment loans, if there's less than 10 payments left, we can exclude those type of things.
Okay.
But especially, when we talk to somebody over the phone, a lot of times, especially a lot of people that are getting divorced, like, well, I don't want you to pull my credit yet.
Right.
I don't want them to see that I'm trying to get a house or whatever it may
Right.
be.
There's a
But I
lot of
want you to
that.
tell me based on what I tell you, what do you think I'd be approved?
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably one of the hardest things to do.
Right.
A lot of people don't know what's on their credit.
True.
And a lot of people, strangely enough, a lot of people don't know how much they make.
That's wild.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah,
like,
it
well,
is.
well, are you hourly? Well, I'm hourly. Okay, how much do you make an hour? I don't know.
Wow.
I think it's this. I'm like, well, that's why we got to kind of
Let's
get
find
prepared
that out.
Yeah, let's find that out so we can kind of see what we can get you qualified for.
Oh my gosh. So you're a wealth of knowledge. You've got a lot. I mean, you're able to spit out anything over here. I'm asking you everything and you've got all the answers. You've obviously been doing this for a while. What led you into mortgage? A lot of people I know in our industry didn't start here. Some people did. Some people didn't.
It's funny. I started out of college. I was a bartender.
Okay.
Like I got my degree in criminal justice. I wanted to be a cop, but then I was bartending while I was going to college. And one of the guys that used to come into the bar all the time owned a mortgage company. And he's like, wow, you'd be really good at sales. So I'm like, okay. So I saw that he drove a nice car and did this and, had the nice suits and all that. And I'm like, well, maybe I should get into this.
Right.
So I kind of just fell into it. And then when I got into it, shortly after was kind of the crash of everything, 08, 09, everything.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of time to read guidelines and read, just kind of sit there and read everything because I didn't have any business in the beginning.
Right.
Which is, with a lot of people that get into our industry in the beginning, you're kind of spinning your wheels. Mm-hmm. So I read through the guidelines. That's kind of been my forte is keeping up on guidelines and new products that can help more people. Because the different products that I know, we can help more people, get mortgages. That's kind of why I came here when I did, because of the vast majority of the product line that's at the bank.
Right. Well, yeah, because you don't want to have to turn people away. Because that's how you make money. I always tell people, go with somebody who's an actual lender. They don't get paid if they don't close. They're going to work for you. They are going to find a way. Same here. My goal is not to just window shop. Let's make sure that we're ready to go and we find what you want because, we don't do banker's hours. We do when people, need us and, that's how we work.
Yeah. I mean, to a point, I want to get paid for what I do, but I also don't want to make people mad. Right.
Right.
So I'm probably my worst enemy when it comes to sales because I'll tell people a lot of time, this doesn't make sense or this doesn't make financial sense or whatever you may do. Because I'm not going to put somebody in a position to where, a year from now, they're calling me saying, well, I can't afford this payment now. I can't do this. Well, I kind of told you,
right.
In the beginning.
Right. Well, that's why you had longevity in the business because people appreciate that. I think you get more referrals that way because they can know that you care about them. It's not just a transaction.
And do I need the money because I have a wife and 3 kids? Of course, but
all girls, right? You're a girl dad, right?
All girls, yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I know I saw your photos online. They're beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's busy. It's busy having
yes.
busy.
And it's the middle of sports season right now, so constantly.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Running people around.
I remember that. It's constant. But you'll look back and these are the best days. Yeah. I look back and even though I was a dancer, both my girls were competitive dance. My son was in sports. He's in football, whatever he was doing. It was running a lot. But, there's just things you can't get any other way in life than being part of team sports and things like that. So it's so good. So what is your tip for, I don't know if you have a tip for it, but, people always ask, that work-life balance. Have you mastered that work-life balance yet?
Well,
and I'm
I
like,
have. I have, but it's
mom, so I don't know if that exists for me.
I mean, luckily, my wife, stays home, so I get a lot of support there, with the kids as far as shuttling them around. We really don't see each other, at night or on the weekend because she's got to take this one here, I take that one there.
Right, divide and conquer.
Yeah. But for me, the work life, being in the business as long as I have, I've kind of determined what's important and what's not important. A lot of people are like, especially newer people are, well, I have to get this done now, even though it's 9:00 at night.
Right.
Like it's not life or death. We can push it till the morning or whatever it may be.
Right.
Determine what is important and what isn't.
Right. Exactly. And I wanted to circle back to, in the beginning I mentioned licensed in 48 states.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people.
That's a lot of, I'm assuming you've got to know a lot. The guidelines, are they all crazy different?
They are different in each state slightly. But as far as being licensed in those states, if you work at a bank, you're essentially licensed in all 50 states.
Okay.
Right? If you're a lender or a broker, you have to take different tests for each state, which I did because previously, working here, I worked at a lender. So I had to take my classes and take my test for all the states. But when I came here, I went from being licensed in 17 states to 48. There's a couple states we don't do just because we don't like their mortgage rules or, certain things that they do for compliance.
Okay.
I just don't agree with. But yeah, the different rules, luckily our system's smart enough. I don't think anybody can remember rules for each state. Our system's smart enough to pick up,
That'd be a lot.
Missed this. Hey, you missed this, or you get a red flag saying this has to go in here. As far as some of the closing fees, but that's really the difference is the closing fees for each state.
Yeah, I'm licensed in Florida. I have a broker down in Florida, and I only have 2 states, and it's completely different. The way they do their taxes is opposite. Their prorations, they're not in arrear.
Michigan's really one of the weird states that pay our taxes ahead of time, and it's not even the entire state either.
No, I learned that because Lansing's different. I had a listing in Lansing, and I learned that. I'm like, oh, they don't do the taxes
so a lot of the
like
time
the rest
we have
of them.
we have to call the city or the township to say how are your taxes paid, so we can set up. There's a lot of stuff we do behind the scenes, like you do behind the scenes, and our customers just don't see.
It's so true.
Like, a lot of people think, as a realtor, you're just open a door, sign some paper, and here you go.
Right.
They don't even realize the amount of emails and calls between each other that we make throughout the process, hiding a lot of the problems that are happening with their transaction.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that anybody buying or selling a house, it's a pleasant experience.
Exactly.
It may not be for us because we're, like I said, handling all the problems behind the scenes.
With a smile and saying, everything's fine, don't worry about it. That's what you hired me for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's how we get the referrals. And, you have to, I think in this business, you have to love it. If you didn't love it, you would probably complain about it. But when you love it, there's ups and downs of everything. But, you're really working, being able to help people, to me, going through these circumstances, the joy that you get when you see someone. I've had clients where I've walked them through their divorce, sold their marital home, got them into their new home, found their new love of their life, right? Sold that home, got them into that home, then sold her house too, and you're just like friends for life, and and I got to go to the wedding, that's an amazing story because you're following people through their life and you're there for them, even though, well, these people bought 5 houses in 18 months. That's not normal. But most people aren't going to do that, but we're still there for them. You're going to be able to do the refi. They're going to need you more often than me because, as the rate does change and, makes sense for them, or they need to pull the money out, like with the HELOC, like we talked about. But it's just the relationship, building that relationship, making sure they know they have a professional they can call when they have questions on their tax bill, or, hey, I'm thinking about moving. Let's just run numbers and see where I'm at. I've got to move out of state now. I'm getting a new job and I just bought the house, a year and a half ago, and I don't want to lose everything. What can I do? Those kind of situations that come up. But it's just the conversations that we have in the relationships. So important.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like you said, working the divorce market. I think it's an important one, because especially someone with, kids, if they're getting custody or full custody, however it is, we want to make sure there's a safe spot for those kids to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot.
There's certain situations where, let's say someone has to move out or they can't afford, they got to go live with the grandparents now until they figure something out. We want to make sure we're setting them up for if they do have to do this for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We can give you a game plan saying, all right, we're not here quite yet, but in 6 months, we're going to be there. Right.
And that's
we're not
the
going to
thing.
forget. We're not going to forget about you. We got you on a plan.
So
Got
that's why
something
it's so
set up
good to
for
go
you.
early. I always tell people, go, even if you're not planning on buying. If you're planning on buying in 3 to 6 months, now is the time to go start talking about it.
Of course.
Now is the time to get your ducks in a row to find out this, and this on the credit report. Let's make some tweaks. That way you're going to get the best rate. Things that you can do to prep yourself, to just position yourself well.
Yeah, a lot of people think, are scared to run their credit, which, we can do soft pulls, see where you're at. It's not going to give us exact, where your score is correctly, but it should be pretty close. But it's not going to be devastating to your credit score or anything like that. Right. Pull these types of things for you.
Exactly.
And it's going to give us, the stuff we need to look out for, saying, well, we couldn't get you something right now, but you're looking in 3 to 6 months. We can get this cleaned up by then.
And that's the thing.
That's a lot of time to get, this off your credit report. Or did you even know this? A lot of people did you even know this was on your credit report?
Yeah, a lot of times they don't. It's like a small collection from like a Comcast. I know it's happened to so many people where they turn their stuff in, their equipment in, and somehow it didn't get marked, and it just is on there as they didn't. And they're,
what I see a lot of,
crazy.
which is strange to me, of, a couple of years ago, people were selling their cars because, cars were worth a lot more a couple of years ago, to make some money off them and then getting into a new lease or buying something else. I've seen a lot of them where it's people that turn in those cars are still on their credit report.
Wow.
I'm like, did you know that was up? No, I have no idea. They told me it was fine. I just traded it in.
Right.
If someone doesn't do the paperwork correctly, it's still going to show up on there.
Right.
But I'm going to help them saying, okay, here's what you have to do to dispute it. Here's the number you call. Here's the paperwork you have to send. It's easier for me to see it and tell them, if you're going into it blindly, you'd have no idea where to start.
Being proactive. And again, it matters who you work with. I say that so many times, but it's so true. You want to work with somebody who's got your back and who's going to take good care of you. And even like you said, even if it doesn't result in a transaction because you think it doesn't make sense, or you're like, this is not going to work out, you want to know that someone's going to be able to help you with that decision. Maybe you do have to rent for a year. It's not always the best option for everybody, but sometimes it's the only option. And if that's the case, then we make a plan so that when that year is up, you're ready to buy. We put things back together for you.
Yeah, like I said, especially when they're ready to buy, or, let's say they have to wait for, there are programs for down payment assistance as well.
Yes.
A lot of people, I don't know if you're familiar with the MSHDA program.
Yes.
Familiar. Okay. So MSHDA basically will give anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 in down payment assistance right now. It changes from year to year how much.
Right.
But let's just say it's $10,000. Now, they generally say you have to be a first-time home buyer or haven't owned a home in the past 3 years. Now, let's say you're getting out of divorce, you own the house, you had to sell it, but you didn't make much money off of it when you sold it, which happens sometimes, after especially splitting the equity or whatever it may be. Right. MSHDA has targeted areas in which people can buy that don't have to be first-time home buyers, right? So they can get into these certain areas. Like Macomb County they have 2 targeted areas, Harrison Township and Mount Clemens.
Okay.
And then all of St. Clair County is targeted, the entire county. Somebody that's not a first-time home buyer can get into that area and use down payment assistance. It's great programs for a lot of people.
It is.
And they have a kind of a lower credit threshold. They only need a 640 credit score.
Yeah, and not everybody works with that program. So I'm glad. I know that you had an accolade with that as well, where your numbers are really high with being able to be successful with people using that. So that's amazing.
And there's different, and this is not just state grant. There's different grants for different cities as well. So that's what I'm kind of going to look for when I speak to somebody, saying, we're not just looking at what you can afford. We're going to say, we're going to look at your assets,
right,
your credit, your income, everything, and say, this is basically going to be the best option for you.
Yeah. And sometimes you realize, wow, I didn't realize that area was going to offer me, like you said, these opportunities. So maybe we consider that. So it's just, there's so much to it. There's so much more to it than people realize. And this has been a great conversation. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. Thank you so much, Manny, for joining me and really sharing this life-changing information for people who do need a little extra help getting approved for a home loan.
Yeah, like you said, kind of the bullet point for me is be prepared early for anything that you're looking to do.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure our listeners are going to want to know more about how they can get in contact with you. So how can people reach you? And of course, everything's going to be in the verbiage below, all of your contact info as well.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to reach me is, you call my cell phone. It's 586-945-5203. It's like everyone else, it's in my pocket at all times.
Yep. And you're good at answering. You answer every time I've called.
Yeah, I mean, especially if I can't talk, I text within like 20 seconds.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And
it's a problem.
Yeah, I know, right? Our families might not love it, but we're like,
yeah, it's a
do you
problem.
love the fact that we have a house to live in and food in the fridge? Yeah. Yep, we do what we have to do. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Of course.
It's been great. And we want to thank all of you who joined us as well. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like our episode, and tap the bell for notifications so that you're first to know when the new episodes of the Onward and Upward podcast are posted. And until next time, everybody be blessed.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.